These are the peaceful hills of southern Malawi. It's a country unused to war. But now this tiny southern African state of 11 million people is fighting for its very survival. Its twin towers of famine and AIDS are tumbling in an anonymous tragedy that is killing hundreds, perhaps thousands a day.
It is really, really critical.
So the world community has got to help.
They have really to help us. Otherwise, we are doomed. We need their help. They must help us. Please, if there are people there with a kind heart, please come to Malawi to help us. We are here in a bad situation.
Justin Makoa is a politician, a well-fed one at that. Like all politicians, he can't resist a photo opportunity. But he's not exaggerating. Aid agencies claim 3.2 million people, or about 30% of the population, is in imminent danger of starving to death. And with AIDS ravaging the most productive sector of the population, the country's survival is increasingly in the hands of its children. Suzanna is 14 and the head of her family. She also only has one pot, so she collects water 3 times a day, 18 kilometres in all. Her family consists of her 2 sisters, Mavis 12 and Patricia just 9 years old. Her brother left for the capital Lilongwe and hasn't been heard of since. Suzanna's parents died 2 years ago from AIDS. Her grandma, who was looking after the family, passed away 3 months ago of old age. Now, in the face of this famine, the 3 sisters have to cope the best they can. The famine has made life so difficult for Suzanna that her daily grind to feed herself and her sisters is becoming increasingly desperate. This often fruitless search for food by AIDS orphans has made them very vulnerable. As children on their own, they sometimes find their meagre supplies are stolen. Worse still, some young girls have no option but to have sex in exchange for food. Others are just raped.
Men will take advantage, really, because there are some charcoal sellers here who get money every now and then. And if she doesn't have food, automatically she can be enticed to get that money so that she can sleep with her. At the end of the day, she has that pregnancy, then that is the end of her future.
The devastation caused by the famine has not only robbed many children of their future, it is also threatening the very fabric of Malawian society. At this time of the year, prepubescent boys and girls are prepared for adulthood. They're separated into 2 groups. The boys dress as girls so they can experience, ever so briefly, the problem of growing up female in this part of Africa. They're also taught the obligations and responsibilities of taking a wife. They learn the history of the tribe, its traditional songs and dances. And then finally, moral lessons. Honesty, kindness and truth. This year, though, there wasn't even enough food for the feast, which normally ends the initiation period. When people become desperate, they will do anything to survive. These villagers have walked 10 kilometres to risk their lives going into this swamp. They're after Nika, a tuber of the lotus plant. But this wetland is infested with crocodiles.
And is that dangerous for them to go to the river?
But death due to crocodile attack is insignificant when compared with the disease few people dare name. This famine has quietly settled on a country barely coping with the AIDS pandemic. This is Trinity Hospital in Nsanje, southern Malawi. These are the patients rich enough to afford treatment. Even here, the nurse can't bring herself to mention that this baby is HIV positive, infected from her mum, who in turn contracted the disease from her philandering husband.
She said she consulted the village doctors, the traditional doctors, about the condition of the child, and the doctors told her that the condition is because the child has no blood, because the husband is not working, I should say. He's working with other women. He's having affairs with other women. Right. So there's a belief that the child becomes sick.
The baby becomes sick?
Yeah, because the husband is having affairs with other women.
Right.
Yeah.
While the official figure is 15%, AIDS specialists say in reality about 30 to 35% of the total population is HIV positive.
It is estimated that about 50,000 Malawians are dying every year from AIDS. Now, this coupled with the severe food shortage that we have that might lead into famine, we are really fearing for the West. And we are in a very desperate situation. We need other people to come in and assist on this problem.
This is what's left after the reaper takes his harvest of 50,000. One old woman caring for almost a dozen children.
Atamba kudwala nateganakana kuchipatala kupimbi koko nanibwerako mwana uyu amai wache anamwalira anthu ali ayi tienta anyamuleni enawa tipite nawo kumatope uka kumatope ali ayi ambulance wabwera anyamuleni uka nawo kuje ni kumwanza anandisiya Kongo akakhala ana enawo acha amai wawo anamwalira kuje ni kubaraka ndana ndisiya Kongo amwalira giye kundisirana onsewo mimi mundu onera.
Is she getting enough food?
Osaona chokwanira swai kaya mupa sidwa chakudya mali ya masana okha mazuro mugono.
Wherever our cameras went, it was the same story. Here in Zadwadza village, 71 out of 200 households are led by children. These three are 15, 10 and 5 years old.
The mother and father died. There are 3 children and living in this pathetic situation. Such kind of a house, or a hut, is already broken, and now we are facing the rain season.
So is anybody helping these people?
Not at all, not at all. It's what we are trying now. So can we find some other people to help us?
The Malawian government wants the international community to help, but is it helping itself? There are still great taboos here about the causes of AIDS and how best to ameliorate its spread. Condoms, for example.
The president is always on the air, on the radio, telling people to avoid sexing, to avoid. The only thing we can do with AIDS today is to avoid sexing, to say no to it. That will be the end of it. Otherwise, we are not seeing the end of this disease coming out, unless we stop it.
Stop sex.
We stop sex, that definitely. And I don't see as the use of condom as a method to stop AIDS. No, instead we are encouraging it, because I know God cannot like it. Because I believe now people they're going ahead using condom. And now when you're using a condom, it means you're making a sin to God.
But the government too has been accused of sinning on a grand scale. This is American maize flour, and people have come from all over Malolo district hoping to take away their 10-kilogram sack. This could have been Malawian corn distributed to save Malawian lives. But in late 2000, the government sold off its strategic grain reserve. As a recent document from the British aid agency Oxfam says, where all the money went has still to be explained. Justin Makoa, the flamboyant member for Palombe, is adamant the government has not done anything wrong.
I believe it's not true.
What have you
Because I think maybe it comes from the opposition. You know, opposition can say anything against the government in order to derail it.
What have you heard? What have you heard about the rumours?
The rumors was that the maize was not stored. I mean, it was not stolen, but it was sold in order to bring in some more money, but not stolen. That's what I heard.
It was the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, that told the government to sell its emergency grain reserve. Tragically, 2/3 of the country's insurance against famine was sold just before the drought began to bite.
What I know is some maize was sold, yes, but at that time there was a lot of maize in our reserves, in the grain reserves, and it was not. It was advice from one of our donors that why are we keeping this maize when we are losing a lot of money? Because that maize was bought, it was not free maize. It was bought from the villages and just kept in the silos. And we were advised to, why don't we sell some of it and make some money? But then 2 years later, the climatic conditions made us not to harvest maize. So these are decisions which I don't think the government should be blamed.
Right across the region, according to Oxfam, the IMF and donor countries have pushed so-called economic liberalisation. This, Oxfam claims, has contributed to food shortages, forcing reliance on imported aid. State marketing boards have been dismantled, all fertiliser subsidies have been removed, and even small-scale irrigation projects like this one no longer receive government funds. In Malawi, an incredibly successful free seed and fertiliser scheme to 2.8 million of the poorest farmers was scaled back on the advice of donor countries, contributing to an untimely slump in food production. Oblivious to all this, Suzanna prepares for the rains which may or may not come next month. After her day in the field, she cooked a meal of maize porridge courtesy of Oxfam Community Aid Abroad. Suzanna had to hide the remaining flour as protection against the robbers. And after washing their hands and saying the Lord's Prayer as grace, "Give us this day our daily bread and forgive us our trespasses," they ate slowly and delicately, respecting every mouthful.
Yes, I think if we don't get on and do something, we will see another Ethiopia. 13 million people are facing starvation, and we must not let it come to another Ethiopia. We must feed these people now.
The world community was insistent when it demanded Malawi restructure economically. Now it should show that same determination to feed the country. If it doesn't, then the only business to flourish will be the business of death.